I would like to say good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our monthly webinar. This is Minet Wellness team coming to you live in the studios. We would like to start by apologizing for the delay. It was technical in its nature, but we want to thank you that you are still hanging on. If there are any other people who are still or were disappointed, please invite them back. Share the link. I would like to welcome you. Because we've already lost time, I would start by saying welcome to this month's webinar. My name is Helen Babazi. I'm the Wellness Coordinator with Minet Uganda Insurance Brokers. As you all know, we have the leadership in bringing to you what we call employee awareness programs to most of our corporate organizations. So all our members would like to say thank you for giving us business. Thank you for partnering with us. Thank you for helping us reverse mental health in the workspace. Now, with us this morning or this afternoon already, I'd like to say that you know that this month has been a mental wellness month. 10th October we celebrated, not really celebrating, but we wanted to really talk about mental health without empowering it, but just creating awareness. And the theme was prioritizing mental health at the workspace. And the real issue is mental health is at the hem of building an organization or destroying it. We need to talk about it. It's not been a normal conversation, but we're trying to normalize it by trying to equip our members, everybody interested, to be able to reverse the tragedy that is causing in a workspace. Now, this morning or this afternoon, we are with our usual expert, a very wonderful person, very interested in improving mental health in a workspace. Perhaps she suffered in the same and she's living from experience. She will tell us more about it. But she has 26 years of experience as a mental health expert, working from medium to large mental health programs in Africa. She has worked in Nairobi with the Uganda Federation of Federation Lawyers, starting the first counseling center in there. In that 26 years of experience, she has worked as a country director for Strong Minds. For some of you who know Strong Minds, it is really strong minds. They are very good at building strong minds in the workspace, but also reversing the cause of depression in this country. I would like to thank them. Thank you for the time you worked there, but thanks for the team which has gone ahead of us. We have a lot to learn from you. And as Minet, we are bringing her here because right now she has a center called Malachite Mental Health Center. And where she's building the web of all the experience that she has had. And her interest is really improving mental health in the workspace. And this morning, she's going to talk about something she's very passionate about, psychological safety in a workspace. You're going to find out why this is an important topic to talk about, psychological safety in a workspace. You all know the strength of every organization. It's the strength of its employers. The strength of every organization is the strength of how they can ably communicate, ably open up to be able to innovate and create and be productive. Now, psychological safety is one of those tools that you can use to create a safe space where people feel free to bring ideas without being convicted of errors, but being free to bring out their very best. She's going to give us how this perspective is going to help you improve what we call mental health in your workspace, and or without it, how it's going to affect your mental health. And surprisingly, this is more to do with the leadership. So if there's any leader in your organization, please invite them to join in. You're going to understand something that is going to help us build as Africa, as Uganda, how we are going to improve mental health in our workspace using our own leadership. Now, without wasting a lot of time, allow me to introduce and invite Christine Angela Nturo, an expert who is going to speak to us this morning and is going to help us. Please write down your questions, start writing them in on the chat such that we can quickly wrap up with them without wasting a lot of time. We are going to buy a few minutes probably, but allow us speak to you and thank you. Enjoy the conversation for today. Thank you. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you very much, Helen, and I am thoroughly excited to be here today. I love this topic of psychological safety. It's definitely growing on me, and I think it's really befitting that we chose to have this conversation as we end the month of October, which commemorates the World Mental Health Day. So I just want to share my slides. There we go. And so let's just dig in the interest of time. So I think one of the things I'll start off by saying is that most people think that psychological safety is about, creating a mushy organization. I don't know if you know the word mushy, where everybody's kind of like, if you ever watch the Teletubbies and they'll all go big hug and they just love onto one another, or Barney the cartoon, Every time you say psychological safety, you kind of get people going, I don't think I want to be that buddy with my employees or with my staff members. And of course, rightly so, because people feel like they have to put a certain measure of distance between them and the office and their office mates that is professional, right? So really, at the end of the day, the major misconception about psychological safety is that it is not about being too nice. So it's also not about creating a comfortable organization where people just become inert, and are not able to move, or they are not able to innovate or become too familiar with one another. On the contrary, psychological safety is about creating that belief, or making sure that staff members have a belief that they will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up when they share ideas, when they ask questions, when they have concerns, or even when they make mistakes, And many times people have ideas, they have questions, they want to ask leadership, they have concerns, but they're like, if I go and ask, my bonus will be at risk. If I mention this, my appraisal might be threatened. If I say this, they will think I am siding with. And so what happens with lack of psychological safety is that people then begin to kind of like cower. In Uganda, we say die in your own movie, People just kind of keep quiet and they don't talk about things. So psychological safety really at the end of the day is a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up, whether they are sharing ideas, asking questions, raising concerns, even talking openly about mistakes they have made, and that the team is safe for interpersonal risk taking. I can take a risk and say, Helen, I'm not comfortable with what's going on. What are we going to do about it? Or Helen, I messed up here. How do we fix this? That interpersonal risk-taking with each other is a huge component of psychological safety. Psychological safety is a feeling. I have to be able to feel safe with my teammates, feel safe in the organization. Psychological safety is also a culture. It's a way of doing work in the organization. It's the way in which we approach difficult conversations. It's the way in which we manage grievances. It's the way in which we tackle, differences of opinion, differences in different of tribes, differences of age, different, all of that comes to psychological safety. And then lastly, psychological safety is an environment. It is also an environment as well, because do our policies, do our systems, do our structures in the organizations, do our processes for work actually enable for people to feel safe, And once we don't have this feeling, this culture, and this environment, we are not able to show up as our authentic selves at work, And of course, the other thing is that it is about being secure in that belief that my contribution is valued and it matters. That because of the centrality of work in our lives, when we are not psychologically safe, people actually begin to get depressed about going to work because they don't think they have anything to add or anything to contribute. And then lastly, our psychological safety is about being respectfully open, and I'm going to use the word respectfully again, respectfully open and respectfully honest. Some places people are too honest without the respectfully part, but respectfully open and respectfully honest without the risk of punishment. Now, it's important to note here that psychological safety is not about those things that have been documented in our human resource policy as disciplinary actions. So we're not talking about being safe to do fraud and then say I made a mistake, or being safe to bully a person and then say I made a mistake, or being safe to harass a staff member and then say I made a mistake. No, those are big no-nos and should not be accepted. But it should be about being able to say, oh, when I went to visit this client, I forgot to, and this is what this meant. Or maybe I overslept because my child is having issues, and then you're able to then, your organization is able to help you. Or I haven't fully understood this new system that we are deploying, and I have questions about it, and I can be safe to ask those kinds of of questions. So that's the psychological safety. But then we also have what we call team safety. And team safety means that every member of the team has to be okay to take risks. Every member of the team has to be okay to express their ideas and concerns. Every member of the team has to be okay to speak up and ask questions, all of them without fear of negative consequences. And when one team member is not okay, then that team is not psychologically safe. What we say is that team has psychological danger. Psychological safety in the team is felt permission for candor. That I am going to be direct with you. I'm going to tell you what's going on. And I'm hoping that in doing that, you're going to receive what I'm saying in good faith. You know, it's about that critical concept for teams that is important for people who lead teams, because psychological safety is a function of leadership. You can do whatever you want as team members. If your leader is not going to work towards building psychological safety, then there's a very high chance it will not happen. Of course, team members are not passive agents of psychological safety, but it always starts with leadership. And of course, the team, in the word team, psychological safety makes it a group effort.
Yes,
all the members of the group have to work together. So we are coming out of that era, pre-industrial age, where we used to, during the industrial age, where fear was what's the word? Fear and authority, fear and the boss, fear and leadership were almost used synonymously. We now live in a world where that doesn't work. We do not run a fear-driven work culture. You know, if we do, then we are creating psychological danger in our teams. And when we are thinking about the post-COVID world, or what we call the bunny world, brittle, anxious, non-linear, and incomprehensible, once we're talking about that word that we're moving in right now, it actually has no place for fear in it. Because if an organization is fearful, they're not going to innovate fast enough to maintain the momentum they need to be able to run through this new system. And therefore, psychological safety becomes important. It is so important that it's going to be the make or break of most companies if they don't get their act together in the next few years. So psychological safety means that we have psychological danger is when we are afraid of admitting mistakes. When we start blaming one another, it is somebody else's problem, not mine. When we are less likely to share divergent views or different views. Why? Because I don't like you, so I'm not going to share something that's going to make you look good. You made me look bad the other time, so this is how I'm going to revenge. I'm going to withhold information from you. And then what happens is we then suffer what we call the common knowledge effect. The common knowledge effect means an organization has started dying because it's no longer innovating. It's no longer coming up with new products, new ways of doing things. It's not even resolving its own inefficiencies. And when it's not resolving its own inefficiencies, it means it's having a knock-on effect, not just on stakeholder engagement, but also on its bottom line. And therefore, when we have psychological danger, we run the risk, we run that risk of not adapting as fast as we need to in this new world in which we are working in. Psychological safety, on the other hand, allows team members to be comfortable to admit mistakes. And let me just say that again. The mistake is not the things that we do that are considered disciplinary action. So you're not going to say, I made a mistake and I did fraud, I made a mistake and I bullied somebody. No. We are able to admit mistakes that have led to waste, mistakes that have led to accidents, mistakes that have led to errors, mistakes that have maybe led to poor forecasting, that kind of thing. So I am comfortable to admit my mistake. And then together as the team, we come and learn from this failure. You know, what is this failure telling us? We are then openly able to contribute ideas, and then we are able to innovate. Every time I'm training on psychological safety, I say to people that your best idea is in your mistakes and in your inefficiencies. Your best money-making idea right now is in how you improve your inefficiencies. If you can improve your inefficiencies as an organization, then you stand a much higher chance of improving your profitability than to spend 3 years trying to design a new product. Than to spend. And of course, once you do that, you even create more money in your system for R&D, research and development. So that's what psychological safety adds to an organization. So when teams are psychologically safe, the members are going to feel engaged and motivated, and of course, this is one of the things people are now measuring as part of their as part of their ESG, and also as part of their PPP, People, Planet, and Profit. Team member engagement is becoming a big thing. Psychological safety leads to better decision making, and this is because everybody has contributed to the pool of ideas. They have been turned upside down, inside out, and then you're saying the whole team then agrees this is the way forward. And then also it fosters a culture of continuous learning and improvement, because every time we bring to the table things that are not working, things that are not going well, systems and processes that are archaic are not bringing us and creating a weight for our teams. You know, do we really have to have 5 signatures on a certain document, or is there a way we can reduce that to 2? You know, so psychological safety fosters a culture of continuous learning, because your teams are constantly able to push boundaries when they keep asking you the question, is this really necessary? How is this helping the bottom line, right? And so in all of these benefits, team psychological safety will impact on team performance, will impact on innovation, creativity, resilience, and learning. Resilience and learning, all of which is critical for this world that we are living in, because things are moving so fast, and organizations need to be on their feet constantly, because they need to be able to innovate. And so when their teams are not safe, people just show up to be present and don't contribute meaningfully in the direction in which the organization is growing, because they are stakeholders outside, and people give them feedback on whether your product works well or it doesn't. The person who drives your car, you know, he's always in the community, he's picking up information. Does he come back with feedback that can help you improve your bottom line and improve your customer experiences? So everybody has to feel like they are included and they have something to offer. Then the next step is to improve learner safety, you know, where team members are comfortable, you know, to ask questions. I'm comfortable to give feedback. Comfortable to receive feedback. And they're comfortable to experiment. It's okay if the experiment falls flat on its face. You know, Thomson Edison had to do 299 bulbs to get to the one that we are using right now. If he had given up on the 53rd, where would we be? If he had given up on the 290th, where would we be? So experimenting is okay, because you always learn something. And then, of course, people have to be able to learn from the mistakes that they make every day. So step 1, people need to feel included. Step 2, people need to feel safe to learn. Step 3 is that people need to feel safe to contribute their ideas. People need to come to work feeling like they make a difference. I might be the tea girl, but I'm making a difference. I might be the head of marketing, but I'm making a difference. I might be the head of operations, but I am making a difference. It doesn't matter what level of the organization I am at. When I bring my skills to this table, I make a difference. And I'm feeling like it is safe. And I can actually point out different ways in which we can improve the way in which we are working. So am I included? Am I safe to learn? Am I safe to contribute? And then the last step is, am I safe to challenge the status quo? Because remember, the death of the organization is in its status quo. When we start doing things the same way all the time, every day, and not changing anything in a changing environment, it means that the environment leaves us behind. And before you know it, the strategies that we were using in 2018 no longer apply to 2024. And then you keep wondering why it is that my customers have moved away. So we have to be able to feel safe to challenge the status quo. There has to be some kind of respect and permission to disagree with the way things are being done. And ask ourselves, is this the best way forward? You know, why are we still using forms when we could go digital, for example? Why are we spending so much money on paper when we could use AI? Does everybody have to be at the front line, or can we come up with 10 questions that everybody asks, and there's a document with FAQs, as in constantly challenging the status quo, right? And when those 4 things are happening, feeling included, safe to learn, safe to contribute, and safe to challenge, then you can actually say that we have psychological safety in our organization. And when those things happen, when I make a mistake as a team member, I'll walk up and I'll say, oh my goodness, I messed up, guys. I forgot to carry the form. I messed up, guys. I actually carried one copy, and when I reached there were 6 customers. I could have actually carried 6 applications, got 6 more customers into the bank, got 6 more customers onto insurance, but I only carried 1. And then someone says, oh, I have learned a lesson. I have a pack of folders in my back seat that I have kept in a certain box somewhere, and that is what I use when I find extra customers. And then we've learned from one another. You know what I mean, yeah? And nobody is feeling bad about the other. But then when we are in a psychological danger, the person who has the secret will keep quiet because they want you to look bad. You know, they do not trust you with their idea, and therefore there's a lot of interesting sabotaging taking place. You know, members are able to bring up problems and tough challenges that they're experiencing. Some of them could even be at a personal level. How do I get my 2-year-old to sleep? You know, because that's affecting my performance, for example, team members can accept others for being different. You know, okay, I know you have work hours in the morning, your best work hours in the afternoon. We can accept that. We feel that it is safe to take a risk. Guys, I have an idea. Will you back me up as I try it out? It may or may not work. You know, we ask each other for help when we are psychologically safe. And then we also have the attitude that no one on the team is acting in a way that's going to undermine our efforts. You know, when people now begin to click because those people don't like us, and that tribe does this, and those people who went to that school, you know, all of that stuff. And then, of course, working towards feeling that your unique talents are being contributed. So strategies to build psychological safety, if you're like, Tina, okay, what are we going to do to get this to work? The first one is, how do we create open and respectful communication? We need a culture that provides for open and respectful communication, because at the heart of psychological safety is human interaction, which is communication. The second thing is, how do we create transparency? You know, sometimes there's of course different information that is at levels of needs to know basis, but on the majority of issues should be open to the teams. People should know what's in budgets. People should know what the targets are. People should know how our targets impact on the next team. You know, what's the level of transparency that's taking place in the organization. The third one is to set clear expectations. We do a lot of this with our KPIs, but sometimes we have to ask each other, you know, as you're doubling your expectations for this year, you're just about to have a baby. Is this really practical? You know, you're tripling your expectations this year, but you're looking after a sick relative. Is this really practical? You know, and of course, if you've had a stud employee the years before, psychological safety is the ability to give each other some slack when there's problems going on, because that's how you look after each other. Then the next one is you reframe failure and mistakes as learning opportunities. So the language is stuff something like this: I can't believe you did this again. We are tired of you making mistakes. The language should change to something like, oh my goodness, you look like you're very distressed about what's just happened. Why don't you sit down? Let's take a deep breath. What are we learning from this situation? What is it that we need to do differently to overcome this particular challenge? And then the last one is to create a supportive and consultative approach to leadership. Those of you who are going to receive the slides from Minet will be able to click onto the study here, and it will be able to show you how the supportive leadership and consultative leadership can actually foster an environment of psychological safety. So, Tina, you're going to say to me, okay, Tina, we've been through all these trainings on communications. We've been talking about giving and receiving feedback. You've been talking about team building, etc., but we are still not cracking psychological safety. What's going on? And this is now where the meat of the class starts. First of all, as a leader, because psychological safety is a function of leadership, we have to be aware of ourselves. We have to be aware of how we show up to our teams. And Johari comes up with a very interesting quadrant of windows that can help explain this. So do I know myself the way my team members know me? You know, am I blind to certain things about my team? So every time I'm like, yeah, guys, I really appreciate the work that you're doing. People are rolling their eyes like, we know you. You know, last week you were shouting at us. Next week you've just, you know, do they really feel that when you say I appreciate, do they feel that you are appreciated? And then there's the hidden self, the part about you that you don't want people to know. You know, the imposter syndromes, the guilt, the anger, you know, those things that you're keeping inside that people don't know about but are weighing you down and are affecting how you lead people. And then the last one is your unknown self. So psychological safety might be an issue in your team if the window, your open window, is small and your blind self and your hidden self are bigger. The larger your open self, that is what people know about you and what you know about yourself, the larger your open self, the more safe your team is. Because you're predictable.
Yes.
They understand your boundaries, you know. They understand the vision and the mission. You know, there are no surprises from you. You're consistent because teams need to be able to trust their leader to be able to trust one another. So when team leaders do not have a large open self, where their blind self is larger than their open self, or their hidden self is larger than their open self, then they're not trustable. And people will not want to open up. So how do we improve our open area? When it comes to the blind area, we have to ask for feedback. So those 360 degrees appraisals that we do, are we asking meaningful questions? Or are we all saying our leader is fine, our leader is fine, our leader is fine? Then you go down into the toilet or the parking lot and then you start really appraising your leader, you know, and they have no idea. You're giving the true shot and they don't know because the conversation is taking place in the parking lot away from them.
And you also fear to share with them.
Because again, you don't want to be reprimanded. You don't want to lose your bonus, you know, you don't want to lose out on your promotion. So you're like, I'm just going to keep quiet. Then the next thing is that you need to, in order to improve on your open area, you need to improve self-disclosure, you know. And many leaders don't understand the power that exists in them talking about their own stories of growth. There's a lot of power in being able to tell your teams how you grew. I remember one time I was coming from the field and I was seated in the car with one of the drivers, and I do not know why we started talking about, you know, the first years when I was married and we were living in a one-roomed house, and my husband, who's very tall, when he would sit in the chair, it would feel, when he would stretch out his legs, it would fill the whole sitting room. And I was talking about it like a joke, you know, like, and this also happened, and I was going on and on and on. And my driver goes, oh my goodness, you know what it's like to live in a one-roomed house? I was like, imagine me, I always thought you were born rich. Can you imagine, you know? And that little self-disclosure there created a new level of respect that, oh my goodness, if this woman can climb up the ladder from a one-roomed house, then anything is also possible.
There's a connection.
So these little tiny things about self-disclosure in a way that's not like boastful, like, okay, I used to walk 10 kilometers, why are you being lazy? That's not what we are saying here. We are saying it's just those little conversations you have about yourself that can help people go, oh my goodness, she's human after all, or he's human after all. The other thing about this open area is many times leaders are struggling with things and they don't open up about them. Things that I honestly don't know. You guys, we have a challenge and I don't know how we are going to fix this. Why don't we all take a 5-minute break, have your lunch, have your tea, let's all meet in the conference room and let's figure this out. As we talk, a solution will show up. Instead of go away, let me think about it and come back and I'll have told you the answer. That's not being open. So we want to improve this blind area, and we want to reduce the blind area and we want to reduce the hidden area. Like I said, the larger the open area, the more trustworthy you are as a leader, right? So we've talked about this when we did positive intelligence, about, you know, the things that make it difficult for us to show up at work, right? And the first one is largely always comes in from our parenting and the way we were brought up as children. And many times people look at me like, Tina, seriously? You want to tell me that these things actually haunt me until the office? And the answer is yes. Every single negative experience that you've gone through that you have not healed from is present in your leadership. It's present in your relationships, whether you like it or not. Yeah, it is present. If you haven't healed from your mean stepmother or stepfather who told you will never amount to anything, you're constantly proving yourself to your employees that you're amounting to something. Yes. And therefore, every critique that comes in sends you back to that wound that you have not healed from. Then, of course, people who've been through psychological trauma struggle, of course, because they have a huge hidden area as they hide the shame from being abused. Then there are people who've gone through grief, also struggle because they cannot, they struggle with with the inability to feel like they're arriving at a new normal, so they'll struggle with being open, you know, and many times they will act out in ways that people look at them and like, so and so is, you know. I can't tell you how many times people have called me to tell me, Tina, I have an auntie, I have an uncle, they lost somebody, they lost their job, etc. They are struggling, but they are denying. You know, and that's what unresolved griefs and unresolved conflicts do for us. The value you assign to yourself, underdeveloped personalities is another thing that you will struggle with as a leader, in order to be able to create psychological safety. Just to tell you that when you do a personality test or a personality assessment, it will give you your personality. Your personality exists in what we call a superior, your best self, and an inferior, your not so good self, you know. And when we are constantly living in our inferior, we have an underdeveloped personality. Wow. Okay. When we live in our superior, we have a developed personality. Yeah. So your personality could be kindness, for example. It could be one of your attributes. But if you're kind to the point of getting broke every month, then you're living in your inferior.
Oh, wow.
But if you're kind in your superior, where you're like, I'm going to give you fish today, and tomorrow I'm teaching you to fish, then your kindness is living in its superior. Yeah. And then we have our undiagnosed mental illnesses. Of course, government of Uganda has told us that there's 14 million of us with mental health challenges. The minority, about 200,000 of those might be treated by Butabika. The rest of us are hanging out here. We do not know that we are not well. And those, of course, have a knock-on effect. Poor mentorship, and my favorites are people who have what we call neuroatypical or neurodivergent brains. Many times we hire people because they are technically good. They're amazing accountants. They're amazing IT people. They're amazing marketers. They're amazing salespeople. They're amazing analytics, you know, and we hire them and they do an amazing job. Then we promote them to become leaders, and then everything suffers. Why? Because people with neuroatypical brains are normally very technically sound and solid at the 3-4 things they love to do, but they struggle with emotional regulation, and they struggle with social networks. Wow. So when you have a neuroatypical brain, it is, you find you struggle with this whole act of leading people, and that can actually have a knock-on effect on the safety levels of your team. Perfect. So that's what's in our hidden area, all of these things. So what's in our blind area? Our blind area is then the behaviors we talked about in positive intelligence. And I would like to ask everybody who didn't participate in that webinar to go find the recording, because it was amazing what we talked about. These are the ways in which we start to sabotage our leadership. We become controllers. We are anxious when we have to delegate, so we micromanage a lot. We become hyperachievers, you know. If our team is not bringing us the result, we do it ourselves. We get the reward outside in front of people. You're like, yeah, thank you for my team, but behind the sides, you're telling everybody how you did all the work by yourself, right? We become restless as leaders, constantly looking for a high and not completing any of our work. We become perfectionists. This business of having standards that nobody can apply to. They're moving, they're shifting, and then of course people can't trust you. You become a pleaser. Yes to everything, and you don't get anything done because you don't want to hurt people's feelings. You can become hypervigilant, meaning that you begin to lead through fear, and you're talking constantly about things that are not working, or you know, it can't work here, not in Uganda, not in this organization, you know. You're resistant to change. Then you become an avoider. Avoider has two faces. The first one is a procrastinator. Everybody has to wait until you feel the juices that will lead you to complete your work before they get their work done, or you just avoid conflict. And then the victim, who thinks everybody is all their faults are as a result of other people. Hyper-rationals, the people who show up without any emotion. Psychological safety is an emotional game. You have to be able to read people's emotions. So when you can't, then you're not creating safety. And then we become judges. Nobody wants a leader who is controlling. Nobody wants a leader who's a hyperachiever. Nobody wants a leader who's restless. People struggle with leaders who are perfectionists. In as much as they say, yeah, he's a perfectionist, he helped me. Yeah, but he also or she also wounded you along the way. Pleaser leaders are really a struggle for most teams because they don't get anything done. They're just politicking their way through. Leaders who lead out of fear stifle innovation. No teams don't improve. Leaders who are avoiders don't address any of the conflicts that are taking place, whether they're internally in the team or externally with other teams or within the market. Leaders who are victims will blame everybody else other than
themselves.
And then, of course, the hyper-rational leader who only looks at facts and figures sucks life out of a team. So when you're leading like this, what you're doing is that you're actually fostering psychological danger. Your teams cannot feel safe around you when you have these behaviors. So as a leader, if you want to be able to foster psychological safety in a team, the first thing you have to do is learn that you need to start growing yourself as a leader. You're the first point of contact, or you're the first point of change that can lead to psychological safety. And leaders who have a very authoritative style actually have the least level of psychological safety in their teams. Then there are leaders who love to say, I like to challenge my team. I just throw them into the deep end. Even that leader actually produces low levels of psychological safety. But consultative leaders and supportive leaders actually produce the highest level of psychological safety because they create a positive team culture. So as we grow as leaders, what we want to do is learn how to be consultative, but also how to be supportive. Less authoritative, less challenging. And when we do that, then we are fostering psychological safety in our teams. How do I know my teams are safe? I'm just going to, is how well do I measure the way in which people are bringing up inefficiencies, mistakes, accidents, productivity issues. The more you're talking about those things, the more psychologically safe your team is. So if people are not owning up, if people are not bringing these issues up, then your team is not psychologically safe. Then you have to also be able to educate people so that they know what we are talking about. And then you have to be able to make sure that people are safe, so to be able to talk about stuff, and then you have to also be able to articulate what behaviors will increase psychological safety in the team. Yeah. So at the end of the day, when we are living or working in a place that is dangerous to us, or what we call has psychological danger, it's going to impact on our mental health. It's going to impact on our mental health. It's going to impact on our physical body. We'll end up with headaches that I think that's kind of like that. No, we're going to end up with headaches, body pains. We're going to end up with abdominal challenges. We're going to end up with increased allergies. We are going to end up, those are the physical symptoms. We are going to end up with psychological symptoms like irritability, sadness, anxiety, fear of vulnerability. That is also going to add to, those are symptoms to show that your team is not psychologically safe. And then there's going to be other things that are going to be changes in appetite, changes in sleep patterns, those of us who go to bed and we can't fall asleep until 3 a.m., 4 a.m., or those of us who go to bed and we wake up at midnight and start counting hours, those people, and then also we'll end up with challenges with delegation and increase in, and all of those are actually symptoms of mental health problems, because they're what I've described as symptoms of depression, symptoms of anxiety, symptoms of substance abuse, because that also does come in, where people have to transition from work to home. They need to take 3 beers, 4 beers, 5 beers, because they don't want to land on their people at home, in a negative manner. So to be able to address psychological safety is about preventing psychological risk at work. What you don't want is team toxicity to lead to mental health challenges for your team members. Addressing psychological safety is also about promoting mental health at work. You can put up all the billboards, all the flyers, have all the talks that you can have. If you as a leadership team are not addressing psychological safety, all of that is lip service. Then the next thing is you want to create a supportive environment to enable people who have had mental health challenges to return to work equitably, but also you want to create support for people to get when they have been wounded. So like the services we provide under the EAP, for example, where people can come in anonymously for therapy, they can come in for coaching on how to become a better leader, and the EAP then pays for that and enables the teams to be able to, the team leaders and team members to heal. And then there's also being able to review our enabling environment, what policies, what structures, what systems are actually feeding a life of psychological danger in our organization, and what do we need to address to make things better. So I think that if we can be able to do those things, then we are better, we are making better headway towards improving mental health in our teams. Most leaders don't like to hear it, but unfortunately it is what it is. We are the measure of psychological safety in
Yes.
our teams.
Yes.
Our mental health determines the mental health of the organization. Our toxicity as top management and top leadership determines the toxic culture of the teams that we're having.
Yes.
And it's about time that leaders stop saying it's those people's fault. And it's about time we started looking introspectively and saying, if I don't heal from the challenges I'm having, if I don't get coaching to address the negative behaviors that are giving me results but are not necessarily the best thing to be doing, if I'm not addressing those things, then my team is constantly in psychological danger. I'm killing innovation, I'm killing performance, I'm killing resilience. I'm bleeding on my team, they go home and bleed on each other, bleed on their family members, and then the cycle continues.
Yes.
So I think let's stop here for now and see if we have any questions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Tina. That was it. And I believe, like I thought from the start of this, it's really about the leadership. Organizations build and die with the leadership in itself, and I'm glad it's coming out. You've talked about something to do with psychological danger here we are talking about, and you've talked about people failing to challenge the status quo. We have a young generation which is growing, and they literally question everything that they have to do. And you've talked about the fact that you must be able to challenge the status quo with respect and permission. And you know that we have a generation disparity that is also affecting this environment. How would you advise an organization with this? And you know that the generation disparity is actually impacting on the psychological safety. The people in the organizations cannot speak because they feel somebody is way too high to reach their level to connect and ask or challenge in order for them to become innovative in the workspace. How do you advise us, and how do you advise in the dealing of the generational disparity?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such a beautiful question, Helen. And one of the things I tell, my clients when we're working and dealing with psychological safety is just this understanding that this market is no longer ours, those of us who are 50 years old. No, the market is for the people who are coming. They are the ones who are going to be doing the future buying and selling. They are the ones who are going to be making the market decisions. It's basically their tests that are going to drive our markets.
Yes.
So if we're not listening to them and designing for them, with them, about them, around them, then we are missing a point. So organizations that have learned how to listen to generations coming are those that stay afloat. Those of us who think we've been here, done that, moved on, and you can't tell me anything, we're the ones who die off. I had a training a few weeks ago, and I was talking to leaders about psychological safety and the fact that it is important that we begin to open up and have conversations, especially around the generational gaps, and understanding that the markets are changing, the way we do work is changing. When my dad ran one of the first computers in East Africa, it was a whole building for the East Africa Power and Lighting Company. It was a whole building, was a computer. He's 70-something now, he holds the phone, and the phone he holds in his hand is more powerful than the computer he ran in the 1970s. That's how much change has happened. Yes. And so if now you're going to continue designing an organization for my 76-year-old dad, and Daddy, I do love you very much, where are you headed? So we need to be able to say, okay, there is now a shifting. The issue here is that there's a shifting in the market, and because there's a shifting in the market, the organizations have to shift along. Yeah, there's and that shifting in the market also impacts on how workplace practices are going to be held. So that needs to happen, and organizations that are embracing being able to have conversations with the younger generations are more likely to be present in the future than those that are not. Yeah.
Thank you very much. There's an anonymous question here from somebody, and he asks, how do you deal with an over-delegating boss that doubles as a pleaser?
Ooh. So basically you're doing all her work or his work, and they are not addressing conflicts or issues that are taking place in the workplace. The first thing we have to do is respectfully do the boundaries. You have your KPIs, and when your boss delegates to you, then you have to, before you go ahead and do the work, you have to ask them, what on my KPIs am I not doing? Make sure that process is documented, because you don't want to come back to your appraisal and you don't have anything to show forth. So you can do that. If this continues to go on, then of course it's important to bring in their leader.
Yes.
And then the other thing about pleaser bosses is maybe bringing it up respectfully and saying, look, we've got a number of things you've promised us, but none of them are working out. You know, what does that mean? The other thing I've been telling organizations is take the positive assessment test. Each of you do it.
Yes.
Come back with your results. Have a conversation and say, oh my goodness, can you imagine? I got 10 in pleaser, and somebody else will say, I got 6 in controller or 5 in controller. Then have a good laugh about how you all knew that is what each other was. You didn't know what you are yourself, but you all knew how everybody else is behaving. And that can be the first way towards addressing those sabotaging behaviors in the team.
Yes. You've talked about something very important that I feel you need to speak into again. How does consequent management work with psychological safety in a workspace? Because sometimes we try to be open, we try to create the environment, but it turns out that during the consequent management events, it turns against you. How do the two, if I want to apply, how do the two best work for an organization to succeed?
Yeah, that's a very good question. First of all, consequence management will always start with how targets and desirable behaviors of an organization are documented and communicated. When there's ambiguity, what are we measuring? What am I holding you up against, right? So that's the first thing. Are we all clear on what we need to do? Are we all clear on what the result is? Yeah. Then that's the first area. Then the second one is when things begin to go bad, address them immediately. Address them immediately. Don't wait until it's 2 months to the end of contract and start saying I need to have a performance conversation with you. Yeah, that just goes to breed on psychological danger. And then the third thing is to ask yourselves, what do you need to learn to get better? You know, what do we need to learn? What do we need to do better? Most times what people don't understand is the challenges an employee is having in an organization is also a sign that your processes, your systems, and your structures are not working. When you have a certain pool of employees struggling in certain areas, you have to go back and ask yourselves, what are we missing in terms of systems, in terms of processes, in terms of our ability to manage people? When we don't address those things, it's always going to be victim mentality. It's that other person's fault. It's we can't hire right. The people are just lazy, blah, blah, blah. But that's leadership's way of saying we are too lazy to want to address systems, to want to address processes, and to address structures that do not serve the organization anymore. So accidents, and this is why I'm saying that accidents, errors, productivity issues are actually your gold mine, because they show you what is not working. They show you where your waste is. If you can address that, then you're already making profits. As soon as you address that, you're making profits.
Yes. Okay. I think Africa is at a place where we are growing. We need human capital more than ever before. We need to see them transcending, and this is all determined by the leaders themselves. But we're also seeing a challenge where the leaders find the people very, very disengaged, and I think you've briefly talked about it. And I think you've brought it out that when people are not having open conversations, they literally just show up for the sake of getting their salary. And this is hitting many organizations so badly. Many HRs are coming around to say, what can we do? They're having team builds out to re-energize the people. And I want you to, just as we try and wind up this call, because it's been a long time, to talk to an HR, to talk to an executive director who is struggling with a very disengaged team, despite the parties, despite the boat cruises that they've had. How would you advise them? Where do I start from for the psychological safety to happen? And of course, you've talked about the leaders themselves struggling, but without knowing. Where do the leaders start from? I could be one of the facets that you've talked about. I'm a people pleaser, or I'm a controller. Where do I begin from? And how do I know I'm a controller? Is there any tests I can take from this that I can start from there?
Yeah. When you begin to put in a lot of investment into your team and you do not see any improvement in trust levels, then it means simply that leadership is the problem. And all the investments that you're putting into the team are not being bought by the team because they know you too well. Basically, you have a large blind spot or a large blind area. And so I always encourage teams, organizations that start as leaders, start as learning yourselves as leaders. There are many other assessments you can do. I just like pick you because it's self-explanatory. When you look at your results, and you add them together as a team, it just speaks to you, shows you this is your levels of toxicity. But there are other team assessments that you can do as well. So I would then say that if that is the situation, then start with leadership. Leave the organization alone, get together as the top leadership of the team, and ask yourselves what's really going on.
Yes. Okay.
You have to give yourself that permission, again, to be psychologically safe, even in that top team.
Yes.
Yeah, because normally that's where the danger starts.
Yes.
Because we think we are safe, and then as soon as we leave meetings, can you imagine what Helen said about me?
Exactly.
Yeah, can you imagine what they said about our department,
Yes.
you know? And we are the ones breeding. So top teams have to remember, EXCO and SMT, I don't know what you call yourselves, you are the number one team of the organization. You're the first team. You're the ones who determine how the rest of the organization is going to behave towards each other. So you have to then pull yourselves away and say, okay, what's dysfunctional about us?
Yes.
If you can fix what's dysfunctional about you, then you already have solved 60% of the challenges downstream.
Yes.
So start as leaders. Yeah, start as leaders. Yeah, and then you'll watch that and then once you as a leadership begin to improve and heal from whatever it is that's going on your team, then you begin to see the knock-on effect of engagement downstream.
Okay, that's quite vulnerability.
Yeah, vulnerability.
And I think you've talked about it very well. There is a question from Mr. James Dungu. He says, how do you deal with a blaming boss? All the achievements are his or hers, but the negative results are for the juniors, even when she or he is partly to blame.
Oh yeah, that's very common. That happens quite a bit, and it's probably one of the things that brings people into my therapy room when they are done and they're like, I can't work with this person anymore. And most of the time, that's one of the things that they're bringing to the table. One would say is that I think there needs to be a level of a conversation that might have to happen higher up. It might not be you coming to tell your boss, by the way, we don't like the way you take all the glory and leave us with all the shame, you know. And
is that the crucial conversation?
It might be a crucial conversation, and it might need the support of whoever it is that this person reports to, and it can be difficult when you don't have that third backup person to support you in that crucial conversation. Then, of course, at the end of the day, it's also about you then asking yourself, how much of this toxicity am I going to be able to bear? Yeah, sometimes it does come down to that. Yes.
Thank you very much, Tina. We are coming to the close of this show. Once again, we would like to apologize for we tuned it very, very late, but it was such an important closure topic for us to address. And as Minet, we are here to serve you. We provide employee wellness programs for organizations, for individuals, and this includes psychometric or psychological assessments for you to assess your mental health levels. It includes activities to do with empowering you, creating mental health awareness in order to empower you to be able to do what we call self-care, manage your mental health as an individual, because it's really a personal attribute that you need to have. So throughout the years when we are partnering with you, our role is really to ensure that your employees have what we call mental health sustained in terms of the policies you have, in terms of the activities, but most importantly, as an individuals, on a personal basis, you remain resilient to the challenges that are outside and you're in control of your mental health. Now, as we close up this topic, I would like to say that our vision is really securing Africa's future. And the biggest risk right now we look at is the human capital. We need human capital more than ever before. Every employer would like the best on their panel to continue to create. The rate of creativity is very, very high. And at the same time, the rate of disengagement is also growing very, very high. A lot of employers are paying money to staff members, paying for electricity bills, paying for internet, but at the end of the day, results are not equivalent to the costs or the expenses that they're putting in. So we are trying on average to try and help you neutralize this. We are trying to support your teams in collaboration with the HR team to try and support them remain resilient, to remain upbeat and reverse the course of mental health in the workspace. So today, as we are here, on the theme prioritizing mental health. Would like to say psychological safety is one of those things that you need to look at, and it begins with the leaders. And Tina has told us it's a function of leadership. If you see a struggling organization, a struggling team, just go up and look at the leadership itself. It means that the leadership is bleeding on the people themselves and is struggling. So would like Tina to actually give us parting shots even as we close for you. We remain available to you on our email, hope@minet.co.ug, for any further conversations on this. We'll share an audio on this, but would like her to share some parting shots just as we close this show. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think there is a hand here. I will figure out how to deal with that. I think the parting shot for me is that we are living in an increasingly globalized world, where services can now be outsourced to other nations with much ease. We're living in a world that is fast changing, and therefore for any organization that wants to find itself relevant, in the near future and beyond, then one of the things they have to do is begin to invest in their staff's well-being, because within their staff well-being is where the innovation and creativity lies, and that's the innovation and creativity that they need to be able to thrive into the next season. Yeah. So being able to create safety for your teams, to be able to say, let's try this out, let's try that out, let's improve this. First, psychological safety, manage your waste, manage your inefficiencies. That increases your bottom line by far. Creates a lot more money to be able to allow you to invest heavily in research and development. But when you're not addressing your inefficiencies, which psychological safety provides for you to do, then there's a high chance that you're going to be constantly dragging your bottom line, and of course constantly scoring poorly on your stakeholder engagement. So my parting shot is that if you want to thrive through the next season, psychological safety is your tool.
Thank you. Thank you very much. To our viewers today, we want to thank you so much for joining us. Once again, we apologize for the lengthy entry on this. We promise to do better. And we would like to say that we have had a very wonderful time with Tina. Tina, thank you so much for the research about this. Tina is very passionate about workplace mental health well-being. And she's part of our panelists. If you want to hear from her more about this story and others, please contact us on hope@minet.co.ug. Minet is here for you. Again, if you've been on this show and you don't have a wellness program, an employee wellness program in your company, please contact us on the same email. We will be able to share with you information that you need in order to join. I would like to say have a great week, and I think we are going into the weekend. We are closing the month today. Have a wonderful, wonderful November as we open, and I know we are coming to the close of the year. Have a wonderful festive season as well. This is our last webinar for the year. Thank you so much. We look forward to the next webinar next year. Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.